Hello everybody and welcome to a special sort of episode of the Australian Aviation Podcast. And the reason this looks a bit ramshackled is because we have heard the big news that Alan Joyce has resigned early, and we thought we'd rush in and record a video. Jay, did look like Joyce would have another couple of months to go. He announced a big aircraft order, record profits this morning, this very dramatic exit. What's going on?
Yeah, this has come after a string of pretty damaging headlines for Qantas over the past week or so. You've had this big federal court case by the ACCC saying that Qantas allegedly sold tickets to more than 8,000 flights that it had already cancelled. The ACCC is calling for a $250 million fine for Qantas, I believe. We've also had, the continuing fallout over this COVID credits thing. Qantas has scrapped the deadline on its COVID credits now. And of course the grilling last week of Joyce, Steph Tully and Andrew McGuinness in front of the Senate Select Committee on the Cost of Living. All of these damaging headlines, this storm of controversy, as you like, has sort of forced Alan Joyce's hand. He was set to leave in November to be replaced by CFO Vanessa Hudson. That is no longer happening. He is going tomorrow. He is going Wednesday, the 6th of September, with Vanessa Hudson to take over immediately.
Why do you think he's done this? And do you think this will alleviate the pressure that's on the airline now?
His stated reason is that the airline needs to, quote, focus on renewal. Not an exact quote, but he said in the last few weeks, the focus on Qantas and the events of the past make it clear to me that the company needs to move ahead with its renewal as a priority. The best thing I can do under these circumstances is to bring forward my retirement and hand over to Vanessa Hudson and the new management team now, knowing they will do an excellent job. So it looks like essentially the choice that Alan Joyce was making was his legacy or the reputation of Qantas.
One of the things that's quite interesting is we've got these big allegations from the ACCC, which are obviously going to go to court. Yeah. And Qantas have said that they're kind of unable to respond properly at the moment, which is understandable because there's a court case going on. What they have basically said was to sort of keep in mind that at the time it was a very chaotic time for aviation, and so it seems to be suggesting that what they're going to say is that yes, we may have sold these flights, but we didn't mean to. There was no intention. Yeah. I think is it interesting that Alan's going, because him going now rather than waiting a bit, that almost you could argue makes Qantas look like they're a bit guilty or not, of doing this.
Quite possibly, yeah. But on the flip side, it also, I think there's two kind of angles to think of here. Is it A, Joyce is going now and hopefully taking all of this bad air with him? Yeah. Or B, is he going now and leaving Vanessa Hudson to face the bad air herself? Those are the two sort of sides of the coin that we're having to consider here.
Now the interesting thing was,
and not to cast any aspersions on Alan Joyce. This is just sort of the scenarios that might play out.
Well, one of the interesting things is the idea of having this transition is that we could kind of ease, or Qantas could kind of ease Vanessa into this big job, give the public a chance to get to know her. Now suddenly she's taking over at 1 day's notice, facing an absolute storm. Yeah. Do we think she's going to be able to cope with this? Because this is now the opposite, surely, of what having the transition was about.
Well, the transition was announced in May, I believe, and so Vanessa Hudson should have had what we were saying in May. We've said a few times on the podcast. We've been talking about Alan Joyce's long goodbye. Should Alan Joyce have just stepped down in May, left maybe a month, and had Vanessa Hudson take over from there? So in theory, she should have had plenty of preparation by now. Perhaps not all the preparation she was going to get before November, but she's had what? 3 or 4 months. It's a pretty long transition period that she's had already. So, and she's been the CFO of Qantas for years now as well. She was the CFO who steered the company through COVID and all of these things. So in theory, she should be up to the task immediately.
And also, one of the interesting things, coming from a CFO background, all of these kind of allegations, whether they're true or not, that was very much away from her ballpark. She does come to this with a very much a clean slate on this area, I think.
And we've had the AIPA already sort of offering Hudson an olive branch. The Qantas Pilots Union is seeming pretty keen to essentially leave the past with Alan Joyce and offer a clean break for Vanessa Hudson, depending, of course, on what she does after that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Jake. And we are recording this on, Tuesday morning, and we're going to record our proper podcast later in the day. But if you want to comment on this on social media, if you've got any points, suggestions, we will read out some of the best ones on the podcast later.